What up? What up? What up? What up? Happy Monday. Happy November. Welcome to another episode of Run Up the Millions. What we're going to be talking about this week is home ownership. One of my favorite things to actually talk about. I love talking about home ownership just for the simple fact that I think that a lot of us don't own, and there's a lot of pros and cons. I feel like that's how a lot of people end up earning a generational wealth, over the years, having that ability to buy in or sell a property. So, welcome. I am your host, Mark Chill. I'm a licensed mortgage banker. Been doing this for 12 years. I'm licensed in 21 states, and I got to give a shout out to the folks that helped me put this thing on. My folks over at Fly Exports, my man Tori, go looking out on the merchandise. If y'all want some, that is flyexports.com. And get yourself some gear. Also, the folks over at Steezy Socks. I like their socks. Their socks is a black-owned company, but you get 20% off. Use my code Chill20. So shout out to them. And shout out to y'all for actually tuning in. Um, like I said before, we're going to talk about home ownership this week. And before we do that, though, we're going to just kind of recap what we've been talking about, which was credit. You know what I mean? The aspect of credit, the details of credit, as far as like your utilization and your payment history being up to 65% of your scores makeup, and what that actually entails in regards to making your payments on time, the impact that could have, the impact that using your card frivolously can have on your credit score, and a couple of ways to be able to get things off of the report, such as disputes. Dispute letters being sent out to the credit bureaus. There's a couple of other methods that we discussed in that aspect too. So check that out. It's all on YouTube. Um, and we'll dive right into it. So when it comes to home ownership, I'm I'm kind of biased, simply because I do own a home. But if you haven't noticed, I'm actually living in an apartment right now. So although I do own, I also understand the benefits of renting a place too. So quick little story time. Back in 2014, living out in Arizona, and I was living in a little condo, renting a condo, and the rent was like $1,000 a month or $1,100 a month for the condo. And at the time, I was in the mortgage business for 2 years, and I talked to a lot of folks, working with a lot of folks who either own homes or refinance homes. Obviously, if they're calling into a mortgage company, then they own a house or they're looking at buying a house. Um, so I was around all of these people that own homes or were looking or aspired to own a house, and in doing so, it kind of changed my mindset when it came to rent. Now I don't got no knock on renting, 'cause like I said, I'm renting right now. Um, but I got into the mindset, man, I'm tired of paying somebody else shit. You know what I mean? Like the rent was 1,100. I don't know how much Buddy's mortgage was on the place, but I'm pretty sure it was less than 1,100 at that time. And so, I'm paying my man's mortgage plus putting cash in his pocket. You know what I mean? So, towards the tail end of my lease, I was like, man, I'm gonna buy a house. I ain't know nothing about buying houses, even though I was in the mortgage industry. I didn't know anything about the house buying process, and I ain't gonna cap. It was a scary ass process, man. That shit was scary as hell. Going through, because like if you never done anything like that, you know what I'm saying, it's a big purchase, it's a big decision. And if you ain't never done nothing like that, you're really stepping outside of your comfort zone. So I started looking at houses, and me and my girl at the time, and we just all the houses was like Nah, 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 nah. Till we found one house. One house was like, okay, this is really nice. You know what I mean? And when it comes to buying a house, the same way that y'all go about, we go about a place to rent, apartment, condo, what have you. You're doing the same thing when it comes to your home. And this difference between the two is just the fact that you're not responsible for all the shit that comes along with, that property. So that's the biggest con when it comes to, home ownership. And with that, then comes down the line the aspect of, um, am I going to be here long term? You know what I'm saying? Am I going to be here long term? So you got to kind of weigh those things all together when it comes to your home buying options, right? So when I bought my house, it was 2015. I had used my 401k as the down payment, which you can still do that. You can borrow against your 401k, or you can pull against your 401k for the down payment of your home. Now, there are some programs out there that do offer, no to low down payment options. Generally, those are government programs that take a lot of hoops to jump through, but they do exist nonetheless. So, programs like NACA, I could think of off the top, um, offers the no down payment options, or option where you can roll the closing costs into the loan. Most regular lenders, your banks, your non-depository institutes, the Better Mortgages, Quicken Loans, or Rocket Mortgages. Now, generally those companies ain't gonna do that. You know, and the reason why you have to have the down payment is really because you want to have skin in the game, or I would say they want you to have skin in the game. They being Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and the lenders. Okay, so if you think back to 2009, 2008, when the mortgage industry the housing market ended up, getting fucked up, it was because people were able to buy houses that they couldn't afford. People were able to buy houses that they had no down payments on, so they had no skin in the game. And when it came time for those loans to mature, or for the payment changed, then they was just like, "Fuck it, I ain't got no skin in the game. I just been paying the note, so I'll let it foreclose, or we'll do a short sale." And then obviously that's what causes the market to do what it did. So that's kind of like the history of that. The biggest pro when it comes to home ownership, in my opinion, I'm biased on this because, like I said, I do own a home. The biggest pro when it comes to buying a house, in my opinion, is the fact that it is yours. You know what I'm saying? It is your property. The money that you are actually paying to it, you're kind of like paying yourself back, so to speak. Yeah, you got the loan on the house, and the mortgage is, the term mortgage means that it generally means that you never pay it off. That's the original term of it. But a lot of people do. So you are essentially just paying yourself back, right? You pay the mortgage company your loan, and in return you get equity. Equity is the difference between what you owe on the house and what the house is valued at. So if you had $100,000 home loan, and the houses end up being valued 150,000, then when you sell the property, you will get the difference. You will get that 50 grand, because the 100,000 is going to pay the loan off, right? And then the excess is what you end up getting back when you end up selling the house, right? And as time progresses, the house value is going to increase in itself, simply because they ain't making no more land. They're doing all this building, but there ain't no land being made. You know what I'm saying? California ain't getting no wider. Texas ain't getting no deeper. You know what I'm saying? Unless they invade in Canada, you know, we ain't getting no more land. It is what it is. So the housing market, the housing values are going to increase, which is a beautiful thing. It's what you want. It's kind of like if you dabble in the stock market, buying a stock for whatever price, and then the stock continuously increasing. That's your property. And then you have the ability to do whatever the fuck you want to do to the house because it's your property. You ain't got to worry about somebody coming in and telling you can't change the color. Um, Somebody telling you that you can't take a wall down or put a wall up or any of that shit. You know what I'm saying? So that is the biggest pro when it comes to owning a house. The downside is that although you have this mortgage payment, right? Your mortgage payment might be $1,000. Within that $1,000 payment, you're paying taxes and insurance. Okay. So your property taxes and your homeowner's insurance annually, in most cases, they increase because the value of your house increases, which means it costs more to insure it. And that means that the land that the house is on now is being taxed at a higher amount. So that's like the biggest con is that although you own it, although you might be in a fixed rate loan, or the monthly payment can change on you because of the tax and insurance. Now, don't get me wrong, you're gonna pay taxes no matter what. We pay taxes on everything, so there ain't no difference in that. And then the insurance, you're gonna pay the insurance. It is what it is. And then when it comes to to owning a home, you have to think about the fact of how long am I actually going to be here for? You know what I'm saying? Like, is this something that I want to hold on long term? If I do want to hold on to a long term, am I comfortable becoming, being a landlord or whatnot and renting it out? And quite honestly, that's what I do. Like I mentioned, I'm renting right now. I'm in an apartment because I moved to Georgia. So my houses in Phoenix are one's an Airbnb and the other one is just a long term rental. And the same way that I felt about me paying somebody else's shit, somebody paying my shit. And so that's another pro is that you can rent it and not have to worry about the bill being paid. And for me, when the kids get older and whatnot, they'll have something that they can decide to live in, um, or they can decide to rent it out too. Because I'll be damned if my kids sell the fucking house. Do not sell the house, kids. In my opinion, unless you do not want to be a landlord, you know, if you ain't got kids, if you about to buy something else, you don't want to handle multiple properties. Completely understandable. You know what I mean? Completely understandable. Everybody's situation is different. The way that I think is, it took a lot for me to be able to own a home. It took a lot for us to be able to own a home. And so with that, I work really hard. I don't want my kids to have to work as hard, but um, I want them to aspire to do something bigger and have the ability to do something greater than I did, because we didn't have that luxury growing up, you know. Um, but that's another one of the pro. I mean, I could go on and on and on and on and on about pros and cons about home ownership and shit, right? But you got to also think about, like, some places have HOAs, right? And the HOA is, there's pros and cons to that. You know what I mean? There's going to be good and bad with everything. If you don't plan on being in a place long term, or you're not the type of person that's going to fix shit, okay, cool, ain't no problem with that, because that's what apartments is for. And if you notice, at least I noticed in a lot of areas, like I live in Atlanta now, and when I was out in Phoenix a couple months back, they're doing a lot of building. And the houses that they're building, they single family residences. They're not apartments, but they're not selling them houses to sell. Sorry, they're not building them houses to sell. They're building them houses to rent. And that's simply because companies realize that it is more profitable for people to rent. Plus, a lot more people want to rent. You know what I'm saying? You don't have that maintenance that you have to deal with. The landscaping that you have to deal with, shit like that. And they're gonna rake in the benefits. They're gonna rake in the dough. You know what I'm saying? And that's why shit's so much more expensive now, anyways, because these companies are finding ways to be able to maximize their profits in simple ways that it's everyday shit. You always going to have a place to stay. That's like no matter what, that's the number one thing. You need to have a place to stay. And so because of that, are you going to choose to rent? Again, no knock. I'm renting. Or are you going to have something that's a little bit more long term, right? And if you do want something that's long term, you don't want to have maintenance, right? Let's say you don't want. Okay, I'm not a fixer upper guy. I don't like doing landscaping. That ain't the type of shit that I want to do on my Saturdays. Um, there's condos for that. With condos, you don't own the land, but you own your unit. You own the building. You know what I mean? And so anything on the outside of the condo, exterior AC units, blah blah blah, landscaping, roof, etc. The condo HOA is responsible for, and anything on the inside of the house or the condo is your responsibility. Inside walls, sink, flooring, yada yada yada. So you can still do whatever you want as far as upgrades or renovations to it. It's just a matter of you don't own the actual land in it. And with that, you got the HOA that you got to pay into, and that's just your maintenance fee. And that's one of the cons of a condo, quite frankly, because I don't know if y'all saw this a couple months ago. There was this condo out in Florida. Now I guess it was like really outdated, and because it was so outdated, they had to change. They had to change the tax. It was either the taxes or the HOA dues, and it was so much of an increase. It was like a six-figure increase. So people's taxes went from like you know $1,000 a year, $2,000 a year to like $100,000 for the year, and they had to. A lot of people ended up moving out of the place or selling it because they couldn't afford the taxes. Um, and that type of shit does happen. Even out in Phoenix, for my property, they overassessed the taxes on one of my houses, and because of that, it inflated the value a little bit too much, beyond the cap. It was just this whole shit. But they got it fixed, you know, and with that, you get a check. So another pro. You know what I mean? So much, so much that you can do when it comes to owning a house. And then the beautiful thing about you know living in an apartment is that you have the community. You know, when we was growing up, we had community. We had folks down the street that we knew. We had folks next door that we knew. When it came to owning, if you owned a house, and I don't see a lot of that nowadays. You know what I mean? Unless you're just like an outgoing individual, or you live in an area where people are just really friendly. Um, Living in an apartment, you got the folks that live above you, or next to you, and you guys are able to kind of communicate a little bit more than if you were living in a house. So that is a beautiful thing about apartments in itself. You have the amenities. You got pools. Some places have gyms. What I'm saying, shit like that. So grills, what have you. So you're not buying all that shit. When I bought my first house, I had to buy almost all new shit, right? Like I had my old couches. I just moved that shit in there. But over time, like you building out your backyard, you know what I'm saying? You repainting the house and all these expenses and shit, and the water bill might be too high. It'd be too high because you got a running toilet or some shit, and the all this different types of stuff that comes with owning a fucking house, man. Like I'm not gonna sit here and cap with you like it's super easy or it's super fun. A lot of times it ain't. A lot of times it's very, very stressful. Um, but it's the destination. The journey is worse the destination. You know what I'm saying? And I love the fact that there is like a home base. I ain't got to worry about like living in my apartment right now. The one thing I don't like is that like my rent for a 2 bedroom is more than what I pay on my mortgage, on one of my mortgages. You know what I'm saying? And then on top of that, you got the utilities, and then they're going up on rent after that. And then there's some shit that's always broke here, and I'm not supposed to fix it. I got to wait on maintenance to fix it. I got to put in a request. These are just my gripes because I like fixing shit. I like that's the type of stuff I like doing, and I can't do that. So it's kind of like I'm out of my element here. And then the people upstairs or people downstairs, they walk hard in the motherfucker, or they play their music super loud. When it comes to this, it is a whole bunch of when it comes to the unit. And the same way when it comes to buying a house, you know what you're getting into until you actually move in. You know, when I moved into my first house, I didn't realize that um, you can hear what's in the other rooms through the vents. You know what I'm saying? You can hear the other what's going on, the TVs or what have you. And that's a lot of stuff that I try to tell people now. Like if you're gonna look into buying a house, like you got to look at a house with a fine tooth comb. Was the foundation fucked up? Where the vents in the house? And even for an apartment, you know what I'm saying? You want to do that for both because you don't want your roommate or your kids or vice versa. You don't want to hear your kids, your roommate, or whomever that you might be, there with. You want to hear them people in their rooms, or you don't want to be able to hear what's going on in the living room in your room. Like so, all that actually still comes together when it comes to the either buying a house or renting an apartment, right, or owning a condo or renting a condo, right. Any type of property that you're looking into, you want to make sure that you go through with a fine tooth comb so that you ain't up a creek for a year or 30 years. There are tax implications if you decide to try to sell your house within a 12-month period of owning it. You get whacked on taxes. You know, and it also looks like a flipping thing. Where you lose money. You got a down payment that you put down, whether it be 3.5%, for FHA loans, which is a government loan, or 1% or 0% for VA loans if you're a veteran, and then a minimum of 5% down on a conventional loan. So you putting down some form of cheese when it comes to buying that property. So when I bought the house, it was super scary. I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew what they told me to do. Hey, we need a pay stub. Hey, we need your W-2. Hey, we need to upload some bank statements. Okay, cool. And then you come to find out, all right, you got to pay for an inspection to be done, and they go through with an inspection. And when the inspection, they looking at if you have a pool, if the pool's actually has water in it. They're looking at pretty much just the structure of the house. Is it something that are there areas of concern? Are there beams that could be infected with termites? Does a roof need to be replaced or fixed? What's the lifespan of the roof? What's the attic look like? Um, are there is there a lot of chip paint or peeling paint, or is the house, foundation messed up? There's been a couple of clients that I talked to who have purchased property without even looking at them. I think that's the craziest thing you could ever do is to try to buy a house and not step foot in the house before you buy it. Like you see it on Zillow or whatever the website is, and you put in an offer on that, right? So this is how the home buying process works when it comes down to it. All right, step by step. Very first thing you do, you call a lender, you call somebody like me. Hey, chill. I want to look at buying a house. What do I got to do? Okay, perfect. Tell me a bit about your house. What you looking for? Whatever. Okay, you're looking for whatever. So then I'm going to get you a pre-approval. right? That pre-approval is going to tell you that you are qualified for up to X amount of dollars or the maximum amount of money that you qualify for. And so you could buy any house, you have a loan on any house up to that number, right? If you want to go over that number, you can, but you gotta pay the difference. So if you're approved for $100,000 and you want to buy a $150,000 house, then you have to bring 50,000 plus your down payment to the table because you're only qualified for 100. That makes sense. Hope so. So once you qualify, so you pre-qualify, you're gonna go out, you're gonna do your house shopping now. You get your realtor, and from there, you're actually looking at houses. They're taking you to homes, and that process can last anywhere from. It just really depends on how long it takes for you to find what you're looking for. So once you go through that process, you're going to submit. You're going to put in an offer on the house to the seller. The seller's either going to approve it, or they're going to counter it, or they're going to reject it, right? If they counter it, then they're just looking for more money, than what you offered. If they reject it, then more than likely somebody else put in a higher bid on the house. So they accept the bid, right? They accept your offer. Now you're under contract, right? And while you're under contract, this is when you're doing stuff like the home inspection. You're doing an appraisal on the house. You're going to make sure that the house is what the value is of the house. And then from there, you're also going to you're going to find your homeowner's insurance. You're going to find what company you're going to do for that. You know what I'm saying? And more, those are really just kind of like the intricacies of it in itself. But that's the real scary part, particularly the appraisal and the inspection, because let's say you put in an offer on a house for $100,000, the appraisal comes back at 80. Okay. Well, if you're like me, I know you're not going to you're not going to spend 20,000 more than what the house is worth, right? So from there, with doing that, when you put in your offer, you want to have a contingency. Okay. What that means is I'm offering you, I'm willing to give you $100,000 for this house contingent on the appraisal. So that means that if the house value comes back at 80, then I'm not on the hook for 100, right? I can either we can separate, we can part ways amicably if that's something that you don't want to do, or we can redo the offer of 80 grand because that's what the house is valued at. Depending on the seller, they'll do one of two. Okay. So let's say that the house comes in valued at 80 grand. Okay. Now you're going to renegotiate or resubmit the offer based off of that contingency. And the seller is either going to accept it or they're going to deny it. All right. If they deny it, then now you're back to square one, which is now you're looking for another house because that seller does not want to honor the contract based off of the value of $80,000, right? So you guys are able to separate part ways amicably and be gone and be done. But now you're back on the market looking for another house, and that's just a rinse and repeat, right? When it comes to that process, I tell clients do not order an inspection before you get the appraisal, because that inspection is going to cost like $400, $500 in most cases. And with that, you don't get that money back if you have to look for another house. And so that just again restarts the process. You got to get another inspection if that's the case. So never get an inspection before the appraisal. Even if the lender tells you like, hey, we need an inspection done. I know. I'm waiting on the appraisal. The last thing I'm going to do is spend $400 on something that the seller don't want to, go through with, or I'm not willing to go through with because of the value coming back low. In best case scenario, the house value comes back higher, and now you sitting on actual equity in the house. You put in an offer of 100, the value came back at 150. Oh, boom, you got 50 grand off rip, and the seller can't back out of those scenarios because It only works in the sense of if the house comes back value lower. If they accepted an offer of $100,000 and the house came in at 150, that is the offer that they accepted. Okay. So you ain't got to worry about them trying to pull the rug under you if the house comes back valued higher. So house comes back valued higher or at 100, whatever. From there, that's the mortgage process. They're just doing stuff behind on the back end, as far as like recording, getting titles done and um, recording stuff with the state, liens and so on and so forth, payoffs, X, Y, and Z. So then once everything's all said and done, all the papers, the T's are crossed, the I's are dotted, everything looks good. Now you're going to close, and you're gonna close either at uh, a realtor's office, or I've closed at McDonald's before, honestly. Just depends on what state you live in. There are some requirements on where you close at. You sign all the paperwork, bam, bam, bam. And then after you sign the paperwork, they're going to record it. They have to record it before you get your keys. So you ain't just going to sign the paperwork and then get your keys same day because it hasn't been recorded. That usually takes like a day or two or whatever. Depends. Anywhere from a day to a week um, to be able to get your keys. Once you get the keys, you are done. You know what I'm saying? You go. That's when you take the pictures and shit, and they do the posts with the realtors like, yeah, clients closed. They already closed a couple of days before, but that's the buying process. You know what I'm saying? Now you in the house. Now you got to furnish the motherfucker, which is always fun. So it is a long process. Sometimes it could take up to a month to close. Sometimes it takes even longer. Just depending on what the hoops are that you got to go through to get closed. Some people run into a lot of issues with liens and titles and all that type of stuff. So, but it's all part of the game. It's just how patient do you want to be when it comes down to it. Um, I mentioned HOAs. We'll dive into that at another time, man. Because like I said, there's a lot of pros and cons for HOAs. One of my houses has one does not, and the one that does, it's pretty strict, but it keeps the neighborhood looking nice, which helps with the curb appeal. They can be annoying, if you got weeds in your yard, or you got to paint the house a certain way that stays within the compliance of the aesthetic of the neighborhood. I can't Airbnb it, if I wanted to, which kind of sucks, but it is what it is. The other one that doesn't, um, it's really kind of like a shit show in the neighborhood. You got people whose lawns look like shit, whose houses look like shit, and you know that it just is what it is. But it's cheaper, you know. So it just depends on what you want, man. When it's all said and done, you just got to know what works. You figure out what works best for you, you and yours, what you want, what your lifetime goal is when it comes down to that, and what you see happening in the future for yourself or for your kids, if you got kids, or your family, I should say. What type of legacy or what type of assistance do you want to leave them with? Because you can't take it with you, obviously, but you can pass it on. And unlike departments, you can't. Sadly, you can't pass them on. Once you're gone, if that person ain't on the lease, then they're kind of up a creek. Somewhat, but that's a story for another day. Hopefully I answered a lot of questions. I know I went to a lot of detail just as far as like the mortgage process, some of the pros and cons of owning a home, along with the pros and cons of having a condo. Uh, what up, Dennis, man? My man, you got any questions, bro? Nope. All right. So with that being said, my nigga. uh, with that being said, man, I'm gonna leave y'all with a quote to end the night, like I always do. And this one comes from Mr. John C. Maxwell. I don't know who that is, but I like the quote. Uh, the future belongs to the curious. You know, the future belongs to the curious. And I guess what I take from that is just that, just like going to the space. Somebody was curious enough to say, damn, I wonder how we can get to space. And somebody else was like, damn, I wonder how we can get to space too. And then they decided to form NASA. So the future belongs to the curious. Be curious in everything that you do or want to do, and they can't take what you learn from it when it's all said and done. I hope y'all learned something tonight. We'll dig more into the home ownership next week. And if y'all ain't got nothing for me, I ain't got nothing else for y'all. So y'all have a great night, man. Have a great weekend, a great week. Have a dope week. Set the tone for the month, and let's run it up, man.